Good evening, everybody. A very welcome to the second edition of Leelas of Love, the series of Leela sharing events that I'm organizing in support of my Nighttime 2018 fundraiser. Sorry for the delay, we're 10 minutes late due to setup reasons. In fact, as you can see, Simon is still like a bit setting things up, but we are otherwise very ready for this very special evening. And I am very grateful for your participation. Also, do feel free to ask your questions or maybe Leela requests or whatever it is that comes up. I will be checking with your questions in like a couple of times during the evening. So yeah, post them whenever they come up. And for now, I'm going to retreat from the screen and give all the space to our dear Simon.
Beloved Lord Adidas Samraj, we're so grateful, beloved, for your miraculous appearance in our lives. Beloved, your all-accomplishing power, which has no limits in time or space, can be activated by our devotion, is activated by our devotion. We pray, beloved, that through our devotion to you, all beings in all times and all places will be awakened to the sublime happiness, beauty, freedom and truth that you are. Om Shri Adida Avatara Hridayam Da. Is this captured on the screen?
Yes, it is.
In the popular mind, people have the idea that the spiritual process really doesn't change you at all. It just sort of consoles you, or makes you a little passive, or philosophical, so-called, you know. But the real spiritual process eats you alive. It makes a wreck out of you, destroys you. this is why I've warned you against it.
Right.
I'm not here to develop a popular movement toward God realization. I'm here to warn people against attempting any such thing. Dangerous business.
Hello to all of you out in online land. So I'm going to start with a few communications from Beloved about Leela telling. The Avatar has spoken. Your service is make my word revelation available. Open your mouths if you receive something from me. Serve my purposes. Serve my person. Do what you're told. Because I'm the one here to do a great work, not you. This is Adidar in March 6, 2006. So I was saying when I spoke with you the other day, all of that kind of working with people, all that kind of crazy interaction play, all the stories of my early life, except what I managed to get into the knee of listening, has been completely ignored by the gathering, and in some sense put under the rug or stuffed in the archive. They don't know what to do with it. There's been nobody with the response, the disposition, capability to take all that and bring it to life in written form. So I get characterized as just a label, guru, institutional whomever. Now come listen to his next lecture. That's how I got shut down by the gathering, because they eliminate most of who I am and make me some institutional symbol with no breadth, no depth, no life, no energy, without having done anything in the past, but always having to do it tomorrow, whereas what I did in the past, I'm not doing anymore. The Leelas of that were supposed to be presented by the gathering. They were supposed to present all of that in various modes, not just telling stories to one another and talking about the old days while they get to be older and older, but put into a form that can be conveyed to devotees over time. and to the public constantly. Well, they never did any of this, any of it. They flat did not do it. As a result, they have in effect destroyed my earlier work, because it doesn't exist in the form of the literature, the Leelas, the how it all happened. It's just a gross disservice, along with so much else that has oppressed me in the form of this gathering, in its amateurishness and unresponsiveness, and its failure to recognise me. There was time when I talked a lot, was wild, associated with people in a very free manner in my submission. And that wasn't for nothing, and it wasn't wrong. It was a profound act of work, and it's been forgotten by everybody. Then again, this is on February the 9th, 2006. It's another thing for me to remind you all of again. You all don't even have Leelas, not for real. You publish books that have my words in it, as if all you want is this yakety, yakety, yak all the time. But how would anybody out in the public respond to that? What's the basis for them responding to it? If you don't tell them about me, if you don't tell them the Leela, who I am and what I do, your experience of me and so forth, then all I am is a talking head here, a philosopher, just passing on words, and I become somebody passing on a product then. You must tell the Leelas. The telling of the Leelas of my person must be the necessary accompaniment of all passing on of my word. So I say it to you all in the Dawnless Testament. The cultural life involves not only the study of my word, but the telling of my Leelas. It's all one together, one thing. But you all still haven't gotten it. You must live in the Leela of my person, everybody telling one another about it, observing it, and so forth. And when you pass on my word to others, they must live in the Leela of my person. You have to bring them into the circumstance with me, the circumstance of knowing me. Don't just say I sat in my chair and said such and such. What was I doing there? Why was I talking to these people? What was I doing altogether? What were people experiencing of me when they sat there? If you don't tell that Leela, you're not transmitting my word properly. The same with the public work. If you don't tell my Leela and are just passing out a philosophy about dogma of some kind, and so forth, you've thrown away the essential foundation and basis for it, which is my own person and your relationship to me and your experience of me. So the absence of the telling of Leelas is a profound absence, because transmission of the story of my person is fundamental. It is the context of the words. And then on another occasion he says, this was April the 2nd, 2006. There's a place in the Happenine book where Raymond Darling is speaking and telling about how he went to everyone personally in the whole world, and nobody ever told anybody else about it. That's essentially factual about me. When did anybody ever tell my Leelas? Why wasn't the world told of my work? Why didn't you create means by telling my Leelas that encompassed it all? Why didn't you tell everybody about how I taught and so forth? I mean, really, not just there were parties and I gave a lecture. You never told my Leelas. You never made the revelation of me. And you never made it usable to people, communicated it in such a manner they can really enter into it and be transformed by it. In the Happenine book that Bhagavan is referring to, this is what he writes. My method is peculiar. I went to countless individuals. I went to all the isolated groups of humankind, and my effect upon them all was so outrageous, so contrary to the ego's life and mind, that no one ever mentioned me to any other human being, for fear of seeming gullible fools. Everyone always carried his or her memory of meeting with me, but each one only carried it in private secrecy within. I'm going to read a couple more things of the Guru, words of the Guru, before I talk. This is from First Word. The characteristic life sign of right, true, full, and fully devotional satsang with me is not the tendency to seek some other condition. Rather, the characteristic life sign of right, true, full, and fully devotional satsang with me is freedom from the presumption of dilemma within the present time condition. Fundamentally, my vehicle is made of totality. I'm here for everyone. The force of my incarnation is the force of my assumption of the entire cosmic domain as the form of my incarnation. So it includes all beings, human, non-human, in all scales of time and space and plane, and modifications of the primal light or brightness. And so mine is an incarnation that does not end with the lifetime of this particular body. Not only this lifetime, but the entire force of my presence, uniquely active in this epoch, is intended to incarnate us all. This is the kiss of all that I referred to in 1986. It's the invasion of the cosmic domain totally. Establishing the means for all to be blessed by me, to realize me, to be divinely translated in me, in perpetuity in all planes, beyond any description of time or space. Therefore, I am the incarnation not only of the patterns in human scale, I am manifested through incarnation in the form of a vehicle that's not only collected in present time from specimens in the human scale, but from the totality of the pattern at the root of conditional existence. I do not teach the motives, paths, and forms of seeking, for these are founded in dilemma, not in truth. I speak from the disposition of the always already realized divine truth. I'm responding not only to human needs, but to the craving of the molecules, the atoms, the constituents of this plane of manifestation. This mighty work is showing its signs in your time, to your face, in your generation, and in all future generations. And one more. This is the piece that Frank Marira likes to send to everyone on their birthday, without fail. Based on being born, you want to engage in an ordinary occupation to feel better, to be consoled, to be enlightened as an individual already born. But divine enlightenment has nothing whatsoever to do with that. Divine enlightenment is about the total and most absolute dissolution of this obsession with birth, this belief in birth. Before there is divine enlightenment, there must be the most perfect transcending of belief in your own birth, and therefore the most perfect transcending of all the implications beyond your birth. Such most perfect transcending is the process I described to you. You want to take up this process as an extension of your birth. But I oblige you to take up this process as a matter of insight into your birth. How many take it up as a matter of such insight is to be seen. Most will tend to take it up as a matter of desire for consolation, as an extension of their birth, to be somehow healed or relieved or distracted from that adaptation to which they are actually committed. Have I said it? So I actually don't know what I'm going to be. I'm actually talking spontaneously. I don't have a plan. I was hoping to have a plan, but somehow there was too much traffic on the road, and it just took me too long to get here, and I didn't have time to get a plan together because I had to focus on driving properly.
Well, maybe somebody from the live stream have a request for a Leela. If you do, then feel free.
Well, I do have plenty of Leelas to tell. I'm not sure of things to say. It's just the order in which I would do it and what I would select. But if anyone does want to ask anything, please feel free. So, one thing I was considering while I was driving was that Beloved has said that the fact that he is a spiritual transmitter is actually very rare. It's a very rare thing for a guru to be a spiritual transmitter in the way that he is a spiritual transmitter. And I remember him saying that he felt that devotees don't really appreciate just how unique he is in that respect. And he said, many teachers don't transmit, they transmit maybe a natural kind of energy, like everything transmits, like we're all transmitting. The wolves transmit, frogs, dogs can transmit. So there's many teachers who transmit like we're all transmitting. But in terms of like a yogic transmission of spiritual power that is actually used to awaken beings or purify beings, he said it's actually quite rare. So he said, for example, there are instances of Ramakrishna giving spiritual transmission. There's instances of Muktananda gave spiritual transmission. Ramana Maharshi, he said, it's suggested that there was some kind of transmission of kind of like a peaceful, some kind of peaceful energy. But Ramana Maharshi didn't really talk in terms of spiritual transmission, and his devotees generally didn't talk in terms of him transmitting to them, though they felt peace in his company. But Nityananda, on occasions, there's recorded occasions of him giving, or in the stories of him giving transmission. But Guru Adidar, Richard Adidar, is a 24/7, 24-hour transmitter. Whether he was when he was in his body and now he's not in his body, he's just transmitting all the time. And not just transmitting, but transmitting the 7th stage transmission, which is unique. So, and I've heard him say that he feels like we don't make enough, or devotees, he doesn't feel make enough of the fact that he's a transmitter in terms of communication with the world. And I was considering how actually there were a lot of things that really excited me when I came to Adidar. Not all at once, because it took me a little while to realize who he was, what had appeared in my life. But as I began to understand what had come into my life, this was 34 years ago that I consciously made contact with him, or him with me, I don't know how it worked exactly. That was in 1984. But there were a few things that just got me really excited. One was at satsang. The offering of satsang was just when I read, he says something like, however wretched your life is, even for 30,000 births, just keep turning to me. And it may not improve, but just keep turning to me. And I'd had like 5-6 years of the most intense therapy and enlightenment intensives and all kinds of seeking to get free of this mind and my misery. And when he said that, I just knew this is the only authentic voice I'd ever really heard. It was the only true, like the therapists were all saying they'd make me better. They never did. You know, the enlightenment intensives, they all said they would make me better or happy, and they never did. And everyone was, my mum would say, you know, when you get a girlfriend or you go to university, you'll be happy, and I wasn't. And friends would say, yeah, you know, as you grow out, get older, you'll grow out of it, and I didn't. And then there was the guru saying, you might remain completely wretched for 25, 30,000 lifetimes. And like, it's okay. It's like it's okay. It's like it's okay. Just keep turning. I had something to do that didn't depend on whether it was successful or not, or whether I got better or anything. And that was so liberating to me. That was so exciting. I can't express. It was like finding a gold mine. Another thing was that he was a transmitter, and then he talked about transmission, and it was just extraordinary to me that I could read these books, and he was talking about he was a transmitter, and it really excited me, and not a normal kind of excitement like you go into a party or something like that, kind of spiritual excitement, and I was like considering in the car. I thought, you know, the Guru's given me so much. And one thing I'll say is I'm not talking officially here for Adidam. We're not in an official space. We're in an anchored space, and I don't represent. I'm not going to be speaking representing any official point of view. I'm not a former missionary at this point or anything like that. And the Guru told me. When I was a former missionary, he told me and two other mission devotees, as we were leaving the island at some point, he said, you who are leaving the island, which was us three missionaries, you three, when you get back to your regions, he said, you tell everything that you have seen and heard on this island while you've been here, without any censorship. He said, the legal department will do what they do, but you as my devotee, he said, you tell it all without any editing, no censorship, anything you've seen, anything you've heard. He said, because I'm not a handshaking, smiling Dalai Lama. He said, I'm a wild, tantric Mahasiddha. And he said, you could say fuck 10 times in your presentation when you get home. And he said, if you say it with devotion, people will still get who I am, and they'll still love you. And in fact, when I did that particular retreat in 1985, which I will tell a Leela from there, this is why I'm mentioning this, because maybe it's not a Leela that would normally be told, for example, this one I'm thinking of. People might not think it's appropriate, but the Guru told me to tell it. See, so I can't fulfill everyone's expectations. So I can't necessarily fulfill the institution's expectations and the Guru's. So if I had to choose, I go with the Guru's what he told me to do. And I did actually say fuck 10 times in that presentation because I wanted to see if what the Guru. I mean, I was testing the Guru for years in all kinds of ways. Even though he kept proving to me who he was over and over again, I still kept testing him for fun, and it always felt an amazing thing to do, to test everything the Guru was saying in my life, not just believe it, but test it out. So if he said say that if you say fuck 10 times. So I thought, let's try it out. And I had my finger behind my back, and I managed to say fuck 10 times in a Leela occasion. One, to, did it 10 times. And he was pretty much correct. There was only one lady who got a bit upset. At the end, she came up to me and said she was upset. Why did I say the fuck? And I explained the guru told me what I just said. And then she was happy with that. So he showed me that I felt he was giving me permission as his missionary and just his devotee to speak freely about him. And to say what was authentic for me. And not to worry about what people think is right or wrong. So, back to excitement, it's the theme of excitement. I was very excited about this transmission. It was like a mysterious, completely new thing, really, in my life, that could be a being who says that he transmits. And I could have this contact with him, and this transmission could happen not just in his physical person, but could happen across time and space, across distance. When I was a little boy, about age of 10 and 11, my parents would, each year for 3 years, we went to Tenby in Wales for our seaside holiday in summer, which lasted like 6 or 7, 8 weeks. It was like a long summer holiday, and we had a little house right on the beach. And one of the things I loved was there was a lifeboat kind of around the pier, and a couple of times during each holiday, 2 or 3 times, this huge boom noise would go out, which was like the alert signal for the lifeboat men. And I'd be a little boy there playing on the sand, and hear this rocket go up. And I would get really excited, and I'd imagine the lifeboat people in the town who had normal jobs, just dropping what they were doing and rushing to the lifeboat to go out and rescue people. So I imagined a hairdresser would just stop in mid doing someone's hair and he'd say, "I'm really sorry, I've just got to go," and they'd just leave them with a screwed up hairdo. Or the butcher or something, he can't even finish wrapping the meat, and he just runs to and I got this incredible sense of excitement. And when I first saw Beloved, and when Beloved first came to England, and then saw him in Holland, and then all the times I saw him in America, and all the times I saw him in Fiji, that was the kind of excitement I had when the conch would blow. The conch would blow, and you couldn't see the guru. I remember once sitting in one of the temples in the Giving temples on Natumba, and the conch, we were sitting there, and the conch would, and every other day he would come and give darshan, the conch would blow. And you never quite knew exactly where he was coming from exactly, or you just knew he was starting to walk. And you'd peer through the shutters, the window shutters of the temple, and then he would appear and he'd be just walking like a lion, like his body just so incredible. Just out of his love for us, just to be with us, and it was just so incredible. Such an incredible thing. And the excitement of hearing the conch blow, or the lada, what they call those drums. Those drums. The excitement of that. The excitement of a gathering's been called and you've been invited. He's doing his image art. So once he was. Many of us were in the Bright Room ceremonies where he would be dancing to Jeff Beck and techno music and hard trance music, and there'd be these 3 screens at the front, and then the guru would walk in with the kanyas, Uchiradharmas, and take the control. These controls he'd just done, he made his latest art, and he would beam it and flash it onto these plasma screens while we had this pumping techno music and trance music, and it was just like, it's just so incredible. And the women were like just dressed up like really, really hot and sexy, and they would like form a circle like round him, like gopis around him, and then the guys would be more spread out, and like we just got so high with him. I mean, it was just so incredible. The excitement of being with him, the raw, animal-like, wild quality of him. It just, and when I say it turned me on, I mean, it still turns me on. I mean, I'm not talking about stories that, you know, it happened then and it's not happening now. I mean, I get the same turn on seeing him on video, or just that shot there of the Crazy Dharma Singh where he comes into the ocean and he speaks like that. I get the same thrill that I see when I see him physically. So I'm not talking about some memories. That he's here now. You know, he's here right now. He's in the room now. And he's in this body now. He's in these bodies. He's everywhere. And so this thrill, this spiritual thrill and excitement, I mean, I don't know about you all, but I feel it. You know, I feel him emerging in my life. You know, I don't have a lot of time. I can't really tell, you know, a fraction of what I like to talk about. So I'm just having to talk a few things. But he has completely transformed my life from the most wretched life to the most ecstatic life I can possibly imagine. I've been with him 34 years, and when I come to him, it was like I had a second chance at a life. It's like being born again. It was being born again. It was like being born for the first time. The amount of attention in, I think it was around 1989, something like that. We were, some of us on retreat, about 6 of us on retreat, took amount of attention. And we were at the, in the hotel, we were doing some work, some service under the hotel, moving some boxes around or something. And we were told that we had to hide because the guru was going to come out and perhaps walk around on his sanctuary. And so we were just putting these boxes away, and then we were going to have to hide. But I think the guru had different plan, different idea, because before we had time to do that, he just appeared, just completely on his own, no Pritchard was with him. We just looked around, you know, we were just preparing to like get away, and we just stood about maybe 15 feet from us, just walked up to us, and there was nothing ceremonial, nothing formal, and it was like seeing a wild animal, like in the jungle, like a gorilla or something. His the raw animal. I mean, I know he's very spiritual, but I was also always turned on by his incredible, wild, unprogrammed quality. And this particular occasion, when he was there, I looked at him. I weren't expecting to see him. And it was like my mind it's like it was a transmission. I don't know how it works, this transmission, but it was like my mind got sliced into. Like my whole frontal line got like sliced like an orange, like it just fell off. And it was the shock of seeing someone who's just totally unprogrammed, you know, just someone who doesn't have a mind in the usual way, who's like completely free. It was like such an invasion of my ego space that I just couldn't it just fell apart. I just couldn't deal with it. And there was just this ecstatic waves of bliss and ecstatic feeling. And that's one occasion I remember of this kind of raw wildness of him. and that I've never experienced in anyone else. You know, I've never, before or since, I've been with a lot of gurus, I've never experienced what I experienced with Daddy Da. In 1995, I had another. I was exposed to this. You know, lots of different occasions, but I'm just picking out some highlights. I and several other people. The Guru hadn't spent any time with devotees apart from his intimates for a year, and then he said that he wanted to bond with all his devotees worldwide, and a devotee was selected from each region to be with him. That's where these pictures come from here. So I don't know if you see this. This is the occasion I'm going to mention here. And here.
Is that you?
Yeah,
That's
me
you.
with the Guru. And there's the one of him actually kissing me on the lips there as well. So that's like, I brought them all, like every phase of him, about to kissing there. So I bought all the pictures I could, and some other pictures there as well. And so there were 5 of us. I was chosen by my region to represent my region in England. And for the first few days he didn't see us, and then we heard that he wanted to see us. So we were like, you can't imagine how excited we were, because we were told, Beloved wants to bond with you, and he wants to bond with his devotees. You know, and there's only 5 of us. So it wasn't like there were 40 of us on retreat or something, just 5 or 6 of us. He wants to bond with us, so we didn't know what that meant. And to bond with, he was talking about the eternal bond, and how bonding, you know, when we normally bond with our boyfriends and our girlfriends and other people, you know, unless we're like in communion with him in our relationship with our lovers and friends, then the bonding is painful attachment. So he was talking about how in the relationship with the Guru, this is one bond where there's no, you know, there's no pain, no ego pain. You know, and it's one relationship where there's no jealousy from his side. You know, it's the one relationship you can live in your life where the other person isn't doing any kind of ego number on you, not doing any jealousy or possessiveness or anything like that. Totally free to live this, only your limits are what you bring, you know, not the other person, which is like really amazing. So I've always been like extremely shy my whole life. So I was quite shy. I was quite shy that the Guru, I was going to be with the Guru kind of closer. One by one, the other devotees went out the retreats and talked with him, and he hugged them and kissed them for a long, long time. And I was the only one left, and I was the last one. You know, there wasn't anyone else. So he played around with me a little bit, really, really sweet, because he pretended that he didn't know it was me. You know, I was the last one, because other devotees were there on the island, but he wanted bonding with the 5 of us, and I was the only one left. So I knew that, and he knew that, but he was pretending like he didn't know. So he went like this with his hand like this, as though like, who is it, kind of thing, just playing a silly game with me. Like that, and then he comes around like that. So again, like the excitement of, you know, he would build up this, you know, he's a master at creating excitement and tension and urgency and anticipation. So he would just keep me waiting, and then he went like that, and then he went like this to me, like that, to come forward to be with him. So I went up to him, you know, this was the being who completely, you know, this is my first, I'd seen him in Holland. This is my first actual contact I'd had with him. And to be honest, if I'd never had seen him physically my whole life, if I'd never had any personal contact with him, I really wouldn't have, I felt I was given everything already. I mean that. And no one is missing out. You know, I felt I'd been given everything already. You could say this was like extra in some way. But I didn't need this. But to know that he loved me, for example, or to love him, or to feel that I was being given the greatest gift of all time. Anyway, he went like that to me. And so I went up to him. And I was really wrecked. You know, I mean, on Crazy Die, he talks about, like, you know, makes you into a wreck. Or what does that mean when he makes his devotees into a wreck and a ruin? And he talks about the enlightened person, it's like it's a ruin, you know, and he's ruined. So I think, for me, there's many ways that he ruins me, or wrecks me, and my devotee friends, that I see him wreck and ruin. There's many different ways in which he does that. One way is just his love, just is so big, it just breaks the heart. And that is a kind of a wrecking, in a very positive way, a wrecking process of the mind, of the programmed mind that's armoured. So I was like really, could say, fucked up, in a good way, by him. And so I went to him and I said, "Beloved, I'm so in love with you, beloved. I'm so in love with you. I'm so in love." I was crying. I'm so in love with you. I'm so in love with you. I didn't know what else to say. I just kept saying it over and over again. I'm so in love with you. I'm so in love with you. And as I was saying it, he was like, again, like a wild animal. I felt this energy from him, which was like, it was like a lion or something. It was like he was really, like he was turned on or moved in his heart, or moved in his whole being, not just his whole heart, his whole being, moved by my devotion. And not just moved, he was like, you know, he was like hungry, he was like hungry, he was like an animal. He was like, what? He was like, oh, it's like, and I'm like that, and he's like, so it was like this incredible feeling, and I felt he was like just, it could go anywhere. He was like totally spontaneous. He was just like, his passion, his love was just so huge and vast. And at some point, I felt my mind come in, because I was there worshipping, saying, "I love you so much, beloved, I love you so much." And my mind come in, almost like, I can't keep saying this over again, I've got to say something else. So I said to him, "Beloved, before I came to you, I was so fucked up." And that wasn't the right thing to say, because he slapped me really hard on my face. I didn't see it coming. So again, it was just like, and it was like a bit like a cartoon, when he used to go like that. And then, I thought it was going to be good, what I was going to say to him, because then I was going to say, "But now you've freed me," you know. I thought that was good, but he didn't like. He just wanted he just wanted this devotion from me. He didn't want to hear about any fucked up bullshit problem, jelly gumbo bullshit. You know, he just wanted like the in the moment love. You know, the real. That's what's real. That was real for him. You know, that's real for me, for him. And then he grabbed me like a gorilla or something like. That's what it felt like. Anyway. And he brought me to him and he just started kissing me all over my head and my cheeks, and then on my lips, and then I just whispered, you know, in his ear, and I'm just started babbling like something. I was saying like, "Beloved, I know who you are. I know you're God, and I'm going to bring everyone to your feet. I'm going to tell everyone that you're God." That's what I said. "I'm going to tell everyone that you're God. I know you're God. I know you're God. I'm going to tell everyone you're God." Just babbling in his ear, like. And yeah, it was just this. Just infinite embrace of like no withholding, you know, love without any barrier, without any boundary. Like no hug, kiss, could ever imagine. And when I went back to my sit down, and then other people went up and hugged the devotees who were already living on the island went up and hugged them. And I felt the most extreme jealousy I've ever had in my whole life. I felt so jealous. He was now giving his loves and hugs to other people. And I was dealing with that for the rest of the night. I was dealing with a lot of jealousy. So, but then when I think all night I was in an ecstatic state. Like I was skiing all night. Skiing in bliss or something, all night long. Something like that. Okay, tell the story. Around the same time, it was a crossover of 1995 and 96. And this is one of the 2 or 3 most powerful nights of my life. We had a group called for a dance party in the hymns to me, and we were all dancing. And this is the retreatants who were part of this retreat I mentioned, and a few more people have come now, so I think there's more people now, and the residents. And we were all dancing, and then at some point, Shawnee, his daughter, who was over from Los Angeles, visiting, was up at the front talking to the guru. And that went on for quite a long while. He was there and she was talking to him. We couldn't hear what was being said. We just saw him talking to her. And it was a lot of energy happening between them. And then at some point they brought the music down so we could hear what was being said, which was really incredible. And she was having a kind of, by the way, anything I say about Shawnee now, because I haven't been able to ask her if I could tell this story. She was totally beautiful through this whole thing. So, in fact, her passion for Beloved, without that, I wouldn't even have this Leela. I lived with Shawnee for a while. She's lived with some other devotees, about 7 of us in Los Angeles, and she's a very special person, a very intense person. I like intense people, exaggerated people. I'm like that myself, so. She was talking to the Guru, and she was basically expressing her distress at the way that she'd been brought up, and certain things she wasn't happy about. And what amazed me that I thought, well, if we were in a really negative cult of some kind, they wouldn't expose this to the devotees, to all of us. You'd hide it. You wouldn't want this to be exposed. But Beloved obviously was he wanted it exposed. He wanted this conversation to be heard by us. And the Guru is just incredible like that. And she was saying to him things like, "Beloved, I used to think you were the devil." And she was talking about the way she was brought up, and Beloved said, he said, "Shawnee," he said, "you can blame, if you're going to blame anyone for what you think went wrong when you've been growing up," he said, "blame me." He said, "because I'm the only enlightened person here." He said, "The women who looked after you, they weren't enlightened, so blame me." And then he said, "I understand that you have to," he said, "all daughters and sons of some age have to sort of rebel against their parents." He said, "I understand you have to do that." He said, "I wish you didn't," but he said, "I understand you do have to sort of rebel." And he said, in the old days, he said, if your son or your daughter was rebelling, in their adolescence, you could put them in the basement without any food and water for a while until they got straight. But he said, we can't do that in these modern times. And then he said, big dad, like Big Daddy, like a big Oedipal, big dad, hard to be glad. Like if you've got a big father, you've got a big Oedipal. That's what I got from that. And then he said to her, he said, Shawnee, to grow up into adulthood, he said, everyone has to learn to grow up, to take some piss on your shoes without retaliating. He said, that's what part of maturing is to you be pissed on your shoes, but you don't retaliate. And he said this was something that she needed to learn in order to mature. And he said, you're not a victim. He said, and I'm not just your father. He said, I'm also your guru. And he said, at some point, he said, you'll realize that you're pinching yourself, that your suffering is whatever happened to you, whatever seemed to go wrong in your upbringing, that you're actually creating your own suffering, you're pinching yourself. And then he said, some of my devotees here have begun to understand that. And he pointed around at us. And he said, Shawnee, one thing you also need to understand, he said, I don't talk about this very much, he said, because people don't understand it very well. But he said, we are in hell. He said, this is hell. This world is hell. He said, hell isn't a place you go to after you die. He said, this is hell right here on earth. And at that point I started to cry. It was like something people don't normally say. And it's what I've felt since I was a little boy or something. That we were in hell. And then the Guru just says it, and I just started to cry. And through this whole talk with Shawnee, because she was quite animated at times, the Guru was so loving to her. It was the most extraordinary expression of human love that I've ever seen. He was totally attentive to her, totally loving, totally listening. He was smiling, he was playful, he was totally non-reactive. Like he was just totally receiving everything she was saying without any reactivity, just pure love. It was the most extraordinary thing to see. And then he said, Shawnee, he said, he said, with all my devotees, I give you rope. Give my devotees rope to hang yourselves. And he said, when you go back to America, he said, you're free, do what you like, he said, but just don't get killed. He said, don't get killed. Anyway, at some point, Shawnee started to go into some kind of screaming. Started to scream, she started to roll around on the floor, like she was having some kind of fit. And one of the devotees who was like, come and like held her so she wouldn't hurt herself. She was rolling around, sort of screaming, and the guru, he got up and he started talking to her. He started saying, I'm talking to, he put his hand on her heart, and he said, I'm talking to the being behind the mind. He said, I'm talking to the being behind the eyes. And he started talking to her, kind of calming, loving things. And then he said to JM, I didn't know what was going on, the next part I didn't know what was going on until later. He said, JM, he said, I thought we got all the bones off the island. I didn't know what he meant until later. What he meant was that Shawnee's art studio was next to the cemetery of the Solomon Islanders who were the cannibals who'd come and cannibalized the Fijians. Mm-hmm. And their cemetery was next to her art studio, and he had asked for all the bones to be gotten off the island. And he was saying to JM, I thought they were all off the island. And then at some point he says, no, they're not off the island. He says there's some still there. And then it was dark, it was pitch black outside. He looked, he was like, if you're me and us and the devotees facing, he's here. Off to the right hand side there was windows you could see outside, it was just dark outside, it was black. And he said, there, he pointed outside, he said, there they are. There's 10 of them. And he said they're being led by that black bitch. And we couldn't look out, there's nothing, it's just darkness. And he's talking about these spirits that he can see. And then it was the most strange, incredible experience the next 20 minutes or something. It was like being in two worlds at once, because Beloved was in both these worlds, and yet we were only in the normal physical world, but he was obviously in both, in all realm, in the spirit realm, and he was telling us about the realm, and he was talking to us rather like it was a theatre or something. So he would talk to us like that, as though the spirits then wouldn't hear what we were saying, and like he was explaining what was going on. So he said, like he's doing an aside to us. So he said, but what most main thing was the way Beloved just took everything in his stride. It was just incredible. Like Shawnee just having an argument, getting crazy with him, and then she's having a fit, and he's just the whole time he was just flowing with everything. And he said, if he started shouting at these spirits. He said, if you don't get off my island by noon, he said, I'm going to use the full force of my cities against you. He said, I'm going to pulverize you. He said, I'm going to eat your genitals for breakfast. He said, I'm going to pull out your eyes and I'm going to poach them and eat them. So he was talking like cannibal language. He didn't say that, but no, then he did say that. Then he said, then he says to us, I'm talking in language that that they understand. So he's explaining what he's doing. So it's like, and then he said to us, I'm not a violent man, he said, but sometimes, he said, if your family are being threatened, he says it's appropriate to use violence, to be aggressive. He said, if your family, and then when he said family, he said, when your family, and he pointed at all of us, are being threatened, it's appropriate to be violent. So everything he was using, everything is teaching. You can see everything was just, he was using to teach. It was just incredible. And then he said, He said, you leave my family alone. And he just was in that vein for a while. Then that stopped. He said, you got till noon to get off the island. So that stopped. Then the dancing started again, and Beloved went with his Ruchiradamas and a few other ladies, he went to speak to a woman in America who was applying to be a Kanya, or to be with him, or to come to Fiji. So he was like doing a kind of a sitter dating thing as well, you know. He was like, I don't know at all, it wasn't obviously not normal seduction and things, but he was like in this she was on a speakerphone, we couldn't hear what was being said in this occasion, and he was like really animated, you know, talking to her over in America, and it was like, in the midst of all this, he was then doing that. And this particular devotee is known as being like a woman that, I mean, I'd been with her boyfriend, previous boyfriend, on retreat in 1990, and all he talked about on the 1990 retreat the whole time was how he couldn't husband this woman because her vital is so strong, and she's like unhusbandable, and how she just defeated him all the time. And I was like his confidant on retreat, so he would just constantly tell me how he couldn't handle her because he's like peculiar and she's bad. Well, there was the guru sort of taking on the most intense women in the community, you know. And so that went on for a while. And then by this time it wasn't dark anymore, the dawn was coming up. And the guru stopped talking on the phone, and he came and he sort of lay back on the chair, on the settee, like this, like in an odalisque type style, and just looked at us all, and we just spent the next 15-20 minutes in silence, just contemplating him, just being with him, which was just beautiful. And then he said to us, he said, you know what? He said, they've already gone. He said they didn't want to wait around till noon. He said because they knew what they had coming. And he said, so they've gone. They've already left. And I forgot to say, actually, prior to this, Shawnee became very relaxed and quiet, like a baby. She just went all soft. She stopped with Beloved speaking to her and talking to her and touching her. She became completely soft. And he said, tomorrow, he said, if you looking at the news tomorrow, he said there's going to be a lot of good news around the world. And he said, and the island is going to be very light. There's going to be very light energy on the island. And sure enough, the next day, I didn't check the news out, but the next day I was just walking and I saw Shawnee with two other girls, and it was like something out of a cartoon or a movie. They were like leaping like ecstatic sheep, gambling or lambs, like exaggeratedly unreal, like a drug trip or something. You couldn't have imagined girls, you know, being so like that. It was like Sound of Music or something. It was like crazy. And the energy was very, very light. Anyway, then so the Guru just sat there for a while with us. It was very beautiful. And then he got up and he said, okay, I'm going to go back to my house. So he, indefinable, so it wasn't his normal house, it was his other house, the house in the village. So he just started walking across the lawn. And about 20 of us, I suppose, we just walked with him. And he was just striding across the room in the lawn in the early morning. So it was just like incredible time, you know, before the day, between night and day. And I remember walking, and there was no kind of rules how we were walking, so we were just like next to him or close to him. There was no formality, we were just walking with him to say goodnight to him. And I remember walking along with him, and I just knew I was like with a super being. You know, I was with like a superhero of like, you know, like someone who had cities like way beyond anything that I could ever imagine. You know, so it's an incredible feeling, like someone who just conducted everything. He'd just conducted with the spirits, with his daughter, with the lady, with all of us. It was just astounding. And then he got to the porch of his house, and he was about to go inside. And he turned around at us like, and stood. And he stood like that with his staff, with this big smile. And he looked at us and he said, "Oh, that was an amusing evening." Big smile. It was like, amusing. It's like insane. I just thought, yeah, it was just the most incredible thing I've ever seen anyone do. You know. What's the time now? I think.
10 to 9.
Oh, and somebody come. Let me check.
I mean, is it good? I can talk more, but is it good to ask, see if someone has any questions or
Well,
anything?
ask them. But it doesn't, I cannot, there are no questions as of now.
Okay. Have you ladies got any questions?
Well, I was wondering, when did you find the guru? Which year?
1984.
1984.
So, I
And
could,
where was that?
yeah, I could tell that story.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe just wait for him. Oh, what's the building?
maybe I'll just start.
Okay.
So, previous to 1984, I had a distressed childhood and adolescence would be a way understatement. And between the ages of 18 and 24, 5 or 6 years, basically all I did was therapy, and every possible kind of healing or self-improvement or religious, spiritual thing that I could find, and the most intense that I could find. You know, basically I felt that my mind was so impenetrable, was so patterned in a way that felt so solid and dense, that at the age of 18 I just decided I wanted to destroy my mind. I wanted to smash it up into little pieces is what I wanted to do. I wanted to, it was like concrete. I felt it was like concrete. I wanted to take, I wanted someone to smash it up. And so I embarked on a sort of a whole mixture of therapies and everything, all kinds of therapies that conflicted with each other, all kinds of endeavours with opposite philosophies. I didn't even care. There was no linear thing. It was just destroy this, just smash something up, change that. Something has to change. You know, something must shift. I did a lot of very intense therapy. At age 24, that came to a halt one day because I went to see yet another therapist. I was always seeking out the top ones, and I heard about R.D. Laing, who was dead, but he's the guy that worked with psychotics and schizophrenics. And I wanted to find the top guy of Langian therapy, because I hadn't tried Langian therapy. So I went to see this guy. I was 24, and I was in so much psychological pain and physical pain because I've got an incurable spine. I've got 3 incurable spine diseases. I'm in constant extreme pain all the time, like as we speak. I haven't had one moment in my life of not being in extreme pain, not even in the Guru's company. And on top of that, I had the psychological pain of I mean, my psychiatrist at the time was really excited because he said I had every neurosis in the textbook. She never met anyone who had every single neurosis, every like phobias, OCD, BDD, hypochondria. I had many.
Yeah.
So I went to see this therapist, and I'd learned as well to function. So although I was in extreme pain, I could function. You know, I could do jobs and things, and but at night I would scream out I would scream at night in the park. I checked out at mental hospital because they couldn't make me any better. They themselves gave up on me. So I went to see this therapist, and in between talking to him, I was screaming. So I'd scream, talk, just normal, and scream again, ah, talk, ah, talk. And he said, Simon, you're the first person that I'm going to turn down. He said, I've never turned a patient away. He said, in 6 years, he said, you know more about therapy than I do. He said, I'm one of the top therapists in the country, so I've been doing it for 30 years. He said, I've never met anyone like you. I've never met anyone who's done so much therapy with all, you've seen the top people, you've been totally dedicated, you know more about therapy than I do. He said, I've never turned anyone down, I'm going to turn you down. I'm not going to take you on. You know, I was going to pay this guy a lot of money.
Oh my God.
So I walked away from there, and I'd always thought I was going to commit, my sort of deal with God since I was like 10 was that I won't kill myself until I've tried everything. You know, I won't kill myself until I've really turned over every stone. And at this point now, after 6 years, I was working 3 jobs to do therapy. I was doing therapy all the time, and I was doing the job, well, except when I was working to get the money to do therapy for 6 years. And so I was walking down the road, I thought, okay, this is it. I mean, what's left now, really? Even the therapists are turning me away, you know, which I kind of suspected that they would, because I was aware of how dense I was aware of how extreme the mental torture was. I wasn't expecting anyone to actually be able to help me, you know, to be honest. I mean, I didn't think anyone could help me, but I was going to try, you know. And also my therapist didn't look happy, you know, the therapists themselves didn't look happy, and privately they would sometimes tell me they weren't, and spiritual teachers would privately tell me that they weren't really happy, you know, because I was so honest I was so honest and out there about my need. I was in so much need that they would actually be a bit more vulnerable and open than perhaps they were with other people. And so this particular day was the day that I come across Leelas. And I was walking down Hampstead High Street, and I was feeling, okay, now I'm going to kill myself. There's nothing left now. What is there left to do? And then I saw this picture in the window of this man dressed in red and looking really ridiculous. It was Adidas Santa Claus costume, but I didn't know that at the time. He was just dressed in red, looking really silly, really long hair. And he had the most ridiculous quote I'd ever seen in my life. It was totally offensive. I just thought it was like out of a children's story or something. It was, I mean, now it makes sense to me, but at that time it was so offensive to all my seeking, because I'd been doing the most sophisticated psychological study and seeking and everything. And the Guru just said, you're already happy, just stop searching and you'll discover you're already happy, or something like that. Relax your search for happiness and you'll find you're already there. I thought, what? This is so offensive to me. And how it could be so simple. After 6 years of trying everything and doing the most extreme things, just to have it put like that, I just thought, what? And the guy, he looked so stupid. I thought, oh my God, this is really terrible. And I thought, but in the back of my mind, I thought, well, there's this thing, well, I'm not going to kill myself till I've turned over every stone, you know, kind of like a deal I had with God. And so I thought, oh, I better check out this guy, he looks like a complete idiot, saying stupid things. Oh my God, I have to come to this, but I have to. It's like, oh God, and now I've got to go and check this guy out. I already know it's stupid. So it was an intro evening in a house, and I walked into this house. It was just me and one other guy, like a typical more of a typical spiritual. He had a beanie on, like a real spiritual seeker type. And but as soon as I walked through the door, there was something incredible, and it really was incredible. And it was like the books, Adinar's books were there. I think Franz Backer and he had set it up with some of the other devotees, Leroy and Kathleen, and just a house. But the entrance as you walked into the sitting room, everything was so conscious. You know, the sitting room was so conscious, and these books, they had loads of the books, like Love the Two Unformed, like 20 of them. Transmission of Doubt, like 30 of them. It's because they couldn't sell them. I didn't know that. You know, it looked like just impressive, but what if they couldn't sell them? Easy Death, like 30 Easy Death. You know, like all these blue. And when it's set up with lots of them all in a room on bookshelf, it looks really beautiful. I mean, like artistically, it's like giant block of blue, giant block of yellow, giant block of red, giant eating gorilla. These incredible names. And I already felt like I was walking into some higher plane or something, just from the books. Like I felt like I was in some higher space, some elevated place. And so I sat down and watched the film. And I'd been doing a lot of primal therapy for... I kind of hesitate. The Guru said, Simon, talk about me, not about yourself. So I'm going to talk about myself for a little bit. So sorry for that. But it's also to make a point. So I was doing this. I did primal therapy for a while with a man. I saw this picture of a man with two cats in his arms, and he looked really happy, and the cats looked really relaxed and happy, and he was happy. And it was a kind of, he called it intensive rhythm therapy. It was a mixture of primal therapy and all kinds of other therapies. And he was in North London, and he ran this program, and it was to get you to be like a cat. And I looked through this whole book of what the next therapy is to do. This was just before I did the Langian thing. And out of all the therapies, I thought, I want to be like a cat. That's what I'd love to be. You know, like that was the only one that attracted me, and I hadn't done that one yet. So I went to I did therapy with him, and then at one point it was a 24-day intensive retreat, silent retreat in solitude, where I wouldn't speak to anyone for 24 days. So for 24 days I would just meditate on a mirror. At home, at night I could go to the hotel but not speak to anyone. Obviously if I had to buy some breakfast or something, I'm allowed to say, can I have a sausage roll or something, but apart from that, no. And then I'd spend 9 or 10 hours with him, but not with him, just in a room looking in a mirror. And in the evening he would give me 2 hours therapy when he would hypnotise me to be like a cat. And after 3 weeks of doing this, it worked really, really well. And I was so much like a cat, it worked too well. He never had one. I developed a purr, and I'd be on the underground. I was once on the underground, the little old lady next to me, and I'm like, I can't do that. But then it was a vibration of purring, and she was like freaking out. I mean, it's quite sad actually. I'm laughing a bit sad. And I used to, when the bus come along, everyone else would stand at the bus stop, but I used to get up on the wall, and I used to lie curled up on the wall while we waited for the bus while the other people are standing. And when I went home to my parents, I was staying with my parents, we had a few cats. I'd spend the whole day just lying with the cats and when I had to get a job, that was the problem. I had to get a job because my natural rhythm had slowed down so slow that I couldn't do work efficiently like you need to be worked. So I got a job with MFI, this furniture store, and it was near Christmas, and everyone was leaping around like the young people to get stuff for people, you know, to get the people that come to counter, and it's like you get them boxes and this and that, climbing everywhere, and I was like moving very, very slowly because my whole rhythm had become like a cat, like a very slow cat. And the manager at one point come along and he'd heard that I wasn't being very productive. He spent a whole day with me, and he would say, "Why aren't you moving? You know, come on, we've got to get on." And he said, "Well, you're not moving right now." And I said, "Look," I said, "I've done therapy, and now this is my natural rhythm that I'm happy with. This is it." And they fired me, and they tried to get me sent to another depot or something to get up because I was. Anyway, so the reason I'm saying this is that to be like a cat was what, but I wasn't able to like function in that cat-like. That sort of didn't fit in with functioning. And when I saw the Guru, so the reason I mention that is like when I saw the what happened was I was watching the movie Adida, and at some point they show him in darshan. I didn't know it was darshan. I didn't know what darshan was. I didn't know he was on a sanctuary. He was on a sanctuary. I thought he was sitting on the pavement or something. He wasn't really sitting on the pavement. He was sitting in a sanctuary, at the Man of Attention Sanctuary, and it looked a bit like a pavement. But to me, he was like sitting on the sidewalk or something, because the way it was shot, you couldn't see. And he was just so relaxed, like a cat. But not like me when I was a cat, because I was like, it wasn't working for me, But for him, he was obviously like completely like a being who was completely no fear. And there was no fear. And there was no stress, there was no tension. And he was like natural man. And when I saw him, I felt this transmission of my true nature. I don't know quite where it come from, but I knew he is me. Like, this is my state. I'm already free. It was like when I was a little boy, all the time I'd felt torture as a little boy. I knew one of the reasons I felt torture was because I knew actually that deep down I was whole and natural and free, but it was covered over. But so covered over, I was told to spare it, I couldn't get back to it. But I knew that I wasn't. The reason I felt so disturbed was because I knew I wasn't being my real self. And when I saw the Guru, he transmitted my real self to me. And I was in that, I was as I knew I was, just pristine, free, always had been, always would be, kind of sense. Didn't last very long, but it was very, very powerful. It somehow, even though it was so powerful, I got the book, got the Dreaded Gone book was what I took home with me. And I didn't understand the book. I spent like months, I just didn't understand the language, didn't understand what it was getting at, surrender. It was like a new language and I wasn't connecting with it. And I still carried on seeking. So although I had this transmission of him, his purity and who he was, the habit of seeking was so strong in me. I mean, that's all I've been doing for the last 6 years, was this seeking. So to not seek to not keep looking, that really was, so I was still seeking. And at some point I was looking at Scientology, not the institutional Scientology, but a friend of mine had with other Scientologists who didn't like the institution, had formed their own Scientology. Like they'd taken the lie meters, the e-meters, the technology, those can things with like whatever, and the wires. They took that and the process and all the processing, just took it away from the institution, did it underground among like a network of people doing it, doing processing, auditing with each other. And they said they could audit me for a certain amount of money. So I was, in fact my father said that he would write a check for 6 months auditing or something, and I had his signed check there. All I had to do was kind of give it to the guy. And then this guy comes in, who's going to audit me, and he says, "Oh, Simon, you might be interested to read this. I know you're interested in Darfrijan," because I've mentioned Darfrijan to him. And it was the Today News, it was one of the newspapers, not Today Newspaper, it was one of the Sunday newspapers or something. And it had something like, I don't know exactly what it says, something like sex guru, drugs guru, fucks young virgins or something. I can't remember, on a Fiji island or something. Something like that. And he said, I don't know if this is true, it's the media, media's true, I don't know, but I know you're interested in Darfrijan. So I looked at it, and I said to him immediately, I read it, and it was all the things he's supposed to have done. And I knew it was complete, I'd seen that, I had the Guru transmit the purity of his state, his divine state had been transmitted to me. So I knew this was complete horseshit. And I felt so touched, I felt so moved that this Guru who'd given me like his purity, that I saw his purity. I was so moved that he had taken on, it just felt this like very, very quickly. It was like, without even thinking, I thought, he's taking on the whole fucking world. He's taking on everyone. He's like taking on everything. He's like right in there. He's like dealing with everything and everyone. I just felt it. I thought, he can deal with me. I thought, he's the one being that's going to be able to, he's going to be able to penetrate. He's going to do it with me. He's powerful enough. He's more powerful than this mind. And I just knew he was, and I felt he needed my help. I felt I felt like he's on his own. Like he's hardly got anyone to help him. He's going to help him. So my heart went out to him, and I said to this Scientology guy, not in a nasty way. I said, I'm going with him. I'm going to be with him. I'm this guy. I'm not going to give you your money. He was fine about it, and I said thank you. And then I signed up for the courses after reading this. Just a 5-minute scan of this stupid stuff, you know. And I felt, you know, he's dealing with sex, all things I'm interested in, sex, drugs, you know. He's dealing with the things I'm obsessed with. That's the kind of guru I need. So, and I hadn't necessarily mentioned that in the intro, you see. This is why I'm also passionate about just talking for real about the guru, because I got turned on by the fact he was dealing with, that he was fucking, that he was doing it to a point where it was outrageous, that he was involved with drugs. You know, why not? So, you know, that was the half of the equation I needed. I needed the other half too. You know, that on its own, without the video, the intro video, and all of that wouldn't have been enough. But somehow it balanced it out. That he's a real spiritual being who's got balls. You know. That's what I wanted. So, yeah, then I signed up. Have I got a bit more time, or are we running out of time? What is the time?
9:15.
So we're ending at 9:30 on the...
I'm not sharp. But I do also still have some questions. So we can also keep a bit of time for that.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, shall I read the responses?
Yeah.
That's fine. Dawn says, these forbidden stories make me feel closer to him.
Which Don is that?
Dawn Fletcher.
Oh, Don. Hi, Don.
And then there is Surya.
Surya. Hi, Surya.
Who has a question. Says, these dark forces, do you believe Beloved is still battling with them now, current time?
I don't know, Surya.
And he says, thank you for the Leelas, Simon. And Jude says, I love these wild stories of Beloved. And Surya again says, got that t-shirt for real. I don't know which t-shirt he is referring to. So that is what came up from Facebook.
Okay.
So, another one.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm going to...
I have another question. And it might bring out a Lila. When was the moment you really were at a point that you wanted to run away from the guru and drop everything? Fuck you, I'm going. I'm out of here.
You mean like fuck the world?
No, fuck the guru.
Fuck the guru?
Yeah.
Run from the guru?
Yeah.
No, Menka, I never had that.
You never had that.
It's always been completely clear with me. Without the guru, I had no life at all. I mean, none. I'm not saying I haven't had a lot of difficulties, but I've never doubted the Guru.
Because he brings up a lot of stuff, all the creeps coming out of the well, so that they will be exposed to evil.
Yeah.
Can be pretty intense.
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Yeah. Any Leelas around that? Maybe you go through intensities that particularly.
Trying to think of,
Maybe in relationship with someone.
well, the whole revelation of Narcissus has been extremely powerful for me. It's just my stories around it are so crazy and intense, and to do them justice, really, I need a lot of time. Because I'm giving a very tiny little amount of my, I could fill a whole room with stories and happenings, and it's a tiny little thing I'm talking about really here. And the revelation of Narcissus is massive. It's a massive, the heartbreak, of that was absolutely well, I could tie it in with another. I could tie it in a little bit, but it really is. I'm really making it very superficial because it's just too big, you see. So there was a period about a year and a half ago when, over the last 7 years, so I've been talking about my time with Guru's company. Over the last 7 years, since the Guru died, I've had a series of...
You mean past out of the body?
Yeah, past out of the body, physically gone. I've had a series of awakenings. I had awakenings even before I come to the Guru, but they never lasted. And I had awakenings while I was with the Guru that didn't last. And then the last 6 years, I started to have a series of awakenings that started to have more and more frequency. I don't mean little awakenings, I mean very powerful awakenings. But each, for me, powerful for me, I'm just talking about my own experience of what I consider to be powerful, not what anyone else would judge. I'm just talking about, I can only talk about myself. But from the place where I come, where I was suicidal my whole, to places where I'm actually free of the mind for long periods of time, or feeling in unity with everything and everyone for long periods of time. That was something I couldn't even imagine would ever happen in my life. So, and in the last 6 to 7 years, I started having like visionary phenomena that connected with my girlfriends, where, well, maybe what I should say, maybe I could say this. In 2005, now I've been practicing now 21 years, so-called, and for a lot of that time, those 21 years, I was fiercely doing the disciplines, fiercely participating. I was a full-time missionary for many years, serving the Guru in America full-time. I really sort of felt like I was giving up my life to him. I kind of ruined my normal life to be with the Guru and serve him and to practice his way, and I was living in community and taking in all functions for 21 years. I was a superhero devotee or anything like that, but if I looked around at my friends and everything, I was like really fucking serious, And in 2005, I had a conversation with the Guru in the tent at Man of Attention. This is after 21 years now of doing sadhana. And I got notes after this conversation, and he said, Simon hasn't even begun to do sadhana. Simon hasn't even begun to do sadhana. And when I read it, when I saw those notes, I didn't have any argument with it. I knew he was right. I knew he was right because I still wasn't happy, you know. And even with the awakenings, and even though I was like could function now really well, you know, and even though from everyone else's point of view, I think I looked pretty happy and good, you know. And even though I could say I had long, you know, I was kind of ecstatic in a kind of way, but I wasn't really happy. I wasn't happy. I still wasn't happy. And, you know, I was still the dreaded Gombo, you know, which is the first book I bought 21 years before. I was still living the dreaded Gombo, you know, I was still adding some sense that things wasn't right on top of everything. I was still seeking, you know. So when the Guru said it, I didn't have any resistance at all. I knew he was right. I was kind of relieved he said it. And it freed me. It freed me because, and this is also why I've got a lot of, I've got every kind of, I couldn't judge anyone's sadhana or practice or what they're doing, to be honest, after what the Guru's done with me, or how it should look for anyone or what. And the Guru said that he is subversive. You know, he said I'm subversive. I've really paid a lot of attention over the years. I mean, these notes I've got here, this is just a tiny fraction of the mountains of material I've collected of the Guru. And on video I've got like, it's been my lifeline to find out everything I can that he ever said that I can get available. I've stolen stuff, I've done terrible things to get hold of material of him. You know, the amount of attention, I spent 3 weeks in the video caravan cabin, sleeping there, because the man there let me just tape all the videos that you're not supposed to have, and I smuggled them all back to England, you know, and I'd had 3 machines going for 3 weeks while I was supposed to be on retreat. And I've done crazy stuff to get to listen to everything, because I wanted to find out everything about the Guru and how he's so beautiful and free. And so I really paid attention to things. And one thing he said, he's subversive, you know, and he said he'll do anything to liberate his devotees. He said he'll even simulate enlightenment completely. In every fraction, he could simulate enlightenment in a devotee to the point that they're convinced they're enlightened, and he could do that for years. And then he could just take it away, just to test them. You know, he said he could do all kinds of stuff with his devotees. He'll do anything. You know, it's just like he's crazy. It's like he's mad. He's completely crazy. So when he said that to me, I didn't have a normal program going. Like, I took it seriously what he says to me, and I think he's subversive. He's like, he's helping me. I don't just think he's just fucking me up. He's helping me. He knows I'm fucking stuck. I've been doing the practice 21 years, and I'm still unhappy. You know what I mean? And he wants to liberate me. I mean, he promised me in all kinds of ways that he was going to enlighten me in this life that I haven't got into. So I really, when he said I hadn't done sadhana, so what I started to do, I thought, well, if I haven't done sadhana, I went through a process. If everything I've done isn't sadhana, there's nothing I could do in this life that is worse than not doing sadhana, than my Guru saying I'm not doing sadhana. You know, there's nothing. If I went out and killed people, you know, if I went out and had children, I mean, maybe it sounds exaggerated, but it could not be worse for me than I haven't done sadhana. I mean, that was like, I haven't even started sadhana. You know, I haven't even begun it. I mean, what can I do? I mean, it's after that you can't fail. You know, when you've been trying everything that you can think of, that you felt the Guru was telling you to do, studying, getting up hours of meditation, celibacy with your woman, you know, for months on end, crazy shit with your woman, the experiments that he took you through, and you suffered and you went through shit and all of that, and then the diet, raw diet, and fasting for lemon juice for 30 days, and till my whole intestinal lining come out, and I mean all the most extreme shit stuff I did for the Guru, crazy stuff for years, and he's saying I haven't even started. So it could have been crushing, and it was, and it was also liberating, because it was like, well, it freed me of all guilt, because it was like, there's nothing I could do now that's worse than this. I'm so failed. It like it took all the wind out of me. It took all the search out of me. It was like the seeking had to collapse. Something had to start collapsing. Not just that though. I had to find another way, because I thought, well, I've still got to do sadhana. I've just got to find out what is sadhana is then. You know, what is sadhana? But it's not what I've been doing. So I changed my whole life. And I actually, and again, this is why I can't really be a good spokesperson for Adi Dam, perhaps never in my life, ever again. Because I did not do all the things I'm supposed to do. I thought, well, I've done all the things I'm supposed to do. Everything I've been telling everyone to do as a CSM, as a worldwide CSM, I'd had all the functions, head of Samraja by this time and everything. I've been telling everyone to do these things, and he said I haven't started. So I thought I've got to do something completely different that's not in the books. That's what I thought. I thought I've got to do something that's not in the books. I've got to do something that's, if it's in the books, it's so deep in the books, like some kind of hidden code, I've got to find it. So I thought, well, what is it on my problem? He also suggested maybe I should never have sex again. He didn't say I shouldn't, but he suggested that maybe I shouldn't. He said, how can you worship me when you've got one hand in your pants? How can you, like, you know, when you prostrate, and you've got one hand down there, you can't prostrate them. So there was even that suggestion, you know, my friend, you know, and I thought that's impossible. I'm a sex addict. There's no way I can, I'm a love and sex addict. There's no way I can do it. So I thought, okay, he's not seriously telling me to give up sex and love and things like this because it's not going to be possible for me. So I've got to find a way to completely meditate on him. I've got to make everything about him. I've got to make all my sinful things I do. I've got to make all my obsessive, stupid things, all my deranged things, all my bad thoughts, all my negative thinking that I can never deal with. They're all my obsessive thinking, all my bad behaviour. I've got to make it all him. I've got to literally make everything him because I couldn't see any other way of doing it. I wasn't. So what I started to do was I read something at that time as well. And the Guru said at some point a devotee might become so worn down by their seeking, so failed, so sort of up against, so failed by their own sweat, so humbled by their own sweat, that they start operating from their highest understanding. They start operating from their highest understanding. And I thought, well, what is my highest understanding? You know, because I got to that point. It's like nothing else is working. It's completely failed. Everything I've done has failed. Everything, not just some little bit, everything. And by this time I'd been taught, it even said I was seeing at some point. It said I'd been hearing. You know, it suggested that maybe I'm hearing. Maybe I'm seeing. I've been in level 6 of practice. It's like, it wasn't like I was initiated the LRO and everything, you know, and yet now he was saying I completely failed, as though none of that was relevant, as though none of it was anything. So I thought, well, what is it? What's my highest understanding? I thought my highest understanding is that he is everything. Yeah, that's my highest understanding. You know, if I was going to imagine enlightened, you know, what I might imagine enlightenment to be, it was that everything is him, like literally everything and everyone. There isn't any particle, any fraction of anything. Every thought, every negative, every positive, everything. Not just the good things, not just the good behaviours, but all the other stuff, everything, the whole lot. So I started to, when I fucked my woman, I was fucking the Guru. You know, not just, I mean, I really was fucking the Guru. You know, I was like really imagining I was fucking the Guru. It got that, you could say weird. I felt I had to be extreme. I had to like make everything so the Guru that all my sinning was the Guru. You know, everything I was doing was the Guru. All my lack of discipline was the Guru. All my failure was this. Like, so if I didn't do the diet and I ate meat, I'm contemplating the Guru. As much as when I'm eating raw. You know, if I'm having an orgasm, I'm contemplating the Guru as much as if I'm practicing sexual conscious exercise in some way. So I thought this is the only way for me. I've got to do something different. I'm too much of a sinner. I'm too bad. I'm too fucked. I'm too much of an addict. So I did that for years. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I only started doing. But the thing was, I thought I'm only going to do what I enjoy doing now. I thought, fuck it. I'm not going to do all these things that I've fucking struggled with. I'm only going to do what I enjoy. Now, as it happens, what do I enjoy? I enjoy chanting, writing songs of the Guru, Leelas of the Guru, studying the Guru, worshipping my woman as the Guru. You know, I enjoy these things. So it wasn't like suddenly there was no contemplation of the Guru. Like now I'm just off having parties, forgetting the Guru. Now I'm just, you know, doing all sorts of stuff that's nothing to do with the Guru. Because actually, all the things I love doing are to do with the Guru. So, but I was only then beginning to do things that are from enjoyment, from a place of already being happy. And then I started studying more about what he said about the 7th stage way, and that he said there's a lot of criticism. None of my devotees get it, that it's a 7th stage way. You know, you're all doing it as a search. You know, you're not presuming you're not enlightened with a small e. You know, like he was saying, you are enlightened with a small e. You know, he was saying like, you know, salvation for my devotees is communion with me. That is salvation, not the 7th stage. You know, it's to live already as though you're enlightened, as though you're with a small e. And then it becomes the big E, enlightenment. And it's to, you know, body location of happiness. And I started like studying the principle of prior happiness, you know, the seventh stage, you know, not seeking, you know, all the and I thought, and living from my highest understanding. My highest understanding is I'm already free, you know, that we're always already free, that there's only the Guru, that we recognize him. When we recognize him, everything is a modification of him. So if everything's a modification of him, then everything is him. So I can worship everything. So nothing is bad. That doesn't mean I'll go out and do weird things, because I'm not inclined to do that. And that's, you know, bad to hurt people and things. It's not what makes me happy. So it wasn't even that I ended up just doing a lot of different, living completely different to how I was before. But I was only now doing things that turned me on. But everything I did, I was contemplating the Guru. And so there was a kind of relaxation, and that relaxation went on for years. And I didn't participate in things that weren't fun anymore. I didn't have actually much contact with the community for years after, because I've been giving myself so much to everyone in the service, and I felt like I just wanted to be more on my own now. I wanted to be with the Guru and just be on my own and handle money and stuff that I hadn't really focused on. And so I did a lot of handling money, handling business, but I did all this meditation on him. And I didn't think, oh, because I'm not going to the cultural class, I'm not a devotee. I thought, no, I'm handling business, I'm handling my money, I'm doing this, it's all him. You know, I'm doing what my heart says. You know, and then he says, don't make decisions with your mind, make it with your heart. You know, so I started making all the decisions with my heart, not with my mind. So only go with my heart. Everything, because I'm just like, okay, just going to do what my heart says now, not what my mind says, what my heart says. Not my mind says you have to go to Guruvara. No, only go if my heart says. What does my heart say? Don't go to Guruvara today. You know, it sounds like little G, it sounds like the ego. But I've done it the other way, that I thought, anyway, I had to do something different. So I just started going with my heart. And then after about 6 years of doing this, 7, 8 years, 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 7, 8, 9 years. Well, I started to have, I had a visionary with women, because I've always been it's been my main alternative to Guru is women, and my distraction with women. It's been like such an alternative, so I thought I have to start worshipping the women, literally really worshipping my women and women as the goddess, as him. Not the goddess separate from him, because he is the goddess. But I thought I have to worship the being behind the mind, you know, behind the breast, behind the pussy. You have to worship the divine being that's there. You know, and the Guru says there's only one divine woman in every woman. There's only one woman. And I wanted to find out, well, what does he mean by that? I want to discover that, you know, because I see a lot of different women. And he's saying there's only one divine woman. So, and he's saying, you know, surrender is universal worship. So I started to, and what I started to notice was, as I started to worship the goddess in the form of women, the goddess started to come to me through various women. She started to come to me through various women. And when I say the goddess, I mean the Guru. I mean, in fact, it first happened here when one of my friends, she looked at me, I think I was naked. We were in some dance party, everyone was drunk. I was telling a Leela, she looked at me. There was this exchange of energy between her and me, and I felt, call me deluded, but I felt the goddess come through her and make contact with me on some kind of subtle level. And I fell in love with her. And I started talking to her as the goddess, not as the person that maybe everyone else was related to, with their characteristics, but to the being behind that. And as I started to do that more with women, we didn't end up getting involved or anything at that time because of various things. But then I took care of a woman that I was going to get nothing from sexually, and I took care of her financially, even though I had no money to give her, and I did it for 6 months, just because she was the goddess and she needed it. And there was nothing in it for me, and I knew there wasn't. But now I was relating to, I was worshipping God, Adida, through women. And then at some point, I was driving my car in Norfolk. This was after this woman coming through, and I felt, you know, I could feel the goddess. I could feel when the goddess is coming through a woman, I can smell her. I can sense that the body gets turned on. It's the Guru I'm getting turned on by in a female aspect. And I was driving my car, and I've been on my single for a couple of years, And I was driving my car, and then a subtle woman in subtle form, came onto my lap, or sat on my lap. Her breasts, she was naked, her breasts were pressing against me, and I'm trying to drive. And she starts kissing me on the mouth, like really intense, really deep. And the Beatles song was playing, She's Got the Devil in Her Heart. I don't know if you know that. She's got the devil in her heart. And it was like really like an LSD experience or something. But I haven't done LSD for like 40 years or something, you know. So it was like, okay. A week later, happened again. Same stretch of road, the same track. She's got the devil in her heart. She comes again and starts deep mouth kissing me. But this deep kissing was deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. It was like a real in love. It was so deep in love. It was like, wow. It was like there was no barrier. There was no barrier to this in love. This was a real goddess. Mm. And I knew I'd meet this woman in physical form within the next month. So I knew she would appear to me. And then the Guru's art. There was an art exhibition of the Guru's art in London, and I hadn't done any physical service to the Guru for years, literally years. Hadn't done anything. I'd been writing chants and writing my Leelas, but all private stuff. Hadn't participated with other devotees for years. Not in service. I've been to some Guruvaras and things, but I hadn't done any service. And I said I'd go down to help with the Guru's art. As it happened, it was going to be in the Saatchi Gallery. Now, unknown to Thankful and everyone else, I'd been to the Saatchi Gallery 3 years before. I'd seen the walls there. I thought the Guru's art would look beautiful on there. I internally did a puja there while I was there, imagining his art on the walls. And I didn't do it because the security guards around and everything. They think I'm weird. But I was psychically waving lights around the walls, around the Guru's pictures around the walls. Anyway, 3 years later, where is the Guru's first art exhibition in London? It's at the Saatchi Gallery. Mm-hmm. And for 3 years I've been praying. For 3 years I've been praying, physically praying, every other week for his art to be at the Saatchi Gallery. Mm-hmm. I didn't tell, I mean, obviously Thankful and everyone had been trying hard to get the Saatchi Gallery. I'm not going to say, oh, I did that, I was praying for that. It wasn't like that. But I knew. But it was connected. My prayers were answered. And that day I was told that the goddess, I would meet the goddess that day that had become in my car. I'd meet her that day. I should dress extra smart and I should worship all the women as the goddess extra that day, more than what I normally did. And I actually went down with Lainey, who I hadn't had a physical relationship with 2 years or whatever, and I treated her like extra, like the goddess. I took her into a restaurant, and the guy said, "Wow, madam, you brought your security guard with you," because I was so attentive to her, you know, like, and I didn't look at any of the other women, and I was just like that. Anyway, and I met Flor that day, within about 5 hours after that. I'd been told I'd meet her, and then the way I met Flor was incredible as well. I felt she started talking about the Guru's art to me, and I felt the Guru's hand come through her heart and touch my heart. And she didn't know the Guru, she didn't even know this artist was the Guru or my Guru, because no one had told her. And I started to cry within 10 seconds of meeting her because of the way she was talking about the Guru's art. And we made love that night, and the Guru told me how to make love to her. He told me exactly what to do. He told me everything. So a kind of process began then that then continued for the next 6-7 years of all kinds of visionary phenomena, subtle awakenings of various kinds that were also mixed in with delusions, mixed in with my own delusions, mixed in with my own patterning. You talked about narcissistic patterning. Well, I was having these subtle experiences and awakenings, but it was also mixed in. The Guru was transmitting to me, but it was also being mixed in with my own patterning. But I let it happen because it was still to be touched by the Guru. So I let it happen, and I didn't judge, oh, this is wrong, it's not good, or, I just like opened myself like you do if you're making love or something. You just open yourself, because the Guru was coming to me, And the last 6-7 years have been completely incredible for me. And he's out of the body, apparently, physically, but for me, he's now bringing to fruition all promises and things he said to me years before, and things that happened years before when he was in the body. To me, this is the incredible time. That was the incredible time too. But he has been awakening me beyond what I can even talk about and make sense to people. I mean, I'm completely happy. Whatever I look like, I'm not even that. I'm just completely happy. I could die now and I'm eternally happy with it. I'm forever in love with him as everything and everyone. There isn't I have no sense of separation from anyone. I still have the patterning is still all here. Of everything there ever was in me is still here, but I have no sense of identification with it. I can say that, it means nothing to people. But for me, it means something. You know, I don't care if it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. I know, you know. I know when I'm happy because I knew when I was not happy. So I know when I'm happy. I know when he's given me everything. And it doesn't stop. You know, it's not like it stops. It doesn't stop. And it's this. He's opened a wound in my heart. You know, I'm in love with people now. I'm in love with everyone now. I'm so in love with people I can't show it to people. It do scare them. You know, it's like I don't have anything. I'm not even having an experience anymore. This isn't even happening. I mean, all these stories I told, they never really happened. They happen on some level, but nothing's really happened ever. There's only ever been the guru. You know, there's only ever been the guru. It's just like he says, we're never born, you know, you're never born and you never die, you know. Well, that's what he transmitted to me. And about 16 months ago, he transmitted that to me. It's a tacit understanding that's completely changed everything. Since the last 16 months, it's just beyond a miracle to me. And it's not even until I can really explain. It's so crazy. I can't even talk about it very well. But he is emerging, you know. He said to me at one point, that he gave me notes, he said that what goes on with Simon, because I've had a certain kind of contact with him, he said, I read what goes on with the whole community because of when I read him, and there's a few other people like him, he said, I can read everything. He said, I read the whole community by what's going on with him. So I know that he's been doing me the last 6-7 years, what's emerging, I know that's happening with everyone. You know what I mean? I know he's coming. I know he's emerging now. I mean, I know he's emerging. I mean, for me, it's already, I can't even talk about me, really. But I know it's for everyone now. See, so it's like, we just got to let everyone know about him now. Because he is, I couldn't, you know, I always hoped that I'd still be alive when he broke through, big time, you know. Well, to me, that's already occurring now. So I'm so excited. I'm just so, you know. To me, it's happening. It's a miracle, you know, and it's maybe not everyone's caught up with it. I don't know yet or whatever, but he's gonna start waking up people more and more. He's going to start waking everyone up. He said that there's, in principle, he said the enlightenment could spread through the world like a forest fire. He said there's nothing to stop it ripping through the world like a forest fire. He said it's not so likely it will happen like that. But he says there's nothing to actually stop that happening. You know, because the thing is, everything has been done in his own body. You know, all the processes, you know, the thumbs, Amritanadi, hearing, seeing, the perfect practice. So when we meditate on him, it's already done in him. And the way I feel it works is that, you know, when he trusts you, like when we trust him, you know, you trust him, and then you start to do the practice more. And then he sees you do the practice more, feels it, you know, he feels you do the practice more, and then he gives you more. And when he gives you more, you do the practice more because you've been given more. And when you're doing the practice more, he trusts you more and he gives you more. And when he gives you more, you do more, and then he trusts you more. And it's this mutual trust. And then at some point, he just gives, when he feels completely trusting, he doesn't cause it. He doesn't cause the awakening. He is the awakening. But when he completely trusts you, it's revealed that you are in that state, that that is the natural state that he's always been talking about.
Mm.
It's trust. It's so human. You know, my relationship with the Guru more and more became more and more personal. The last, you know, through everything is him. He communicates with me in every way through everything. That's what I feel.
Mm.
You know, like he is everything. The relationship with him is it's here. You know, it's like recognizing that there is this relationship. You know, it's like recognizing that everything he said is true. You know, it's recognizing who he is. You know, it's recognizing that that everything he says is true. You know, it's like recognizing that he is in everyone and as everyone. You know, it's like really taking every word, like just reading it. And at some points I'll start reading his sentences over and over and over again, you know, and I'd catch myself modifying or filtering certain things he was saying. He'd say something and I'd think, oh, is it true? And I'd read it again. I keep reading it until the resistance stopped, you know, until the mind just starts to like, is agreed to it. You know, it's like lost its resistance, then you read the next thing.
Mm.
And just like, you know, replacing our minds with his transcendental mind. You know, like just turning everything into meditation of him. Everything, like everything. Like taking every word he says, absolutely, you know, on trust and everything. Not because we're just blind believers, but because we've tested him so much, it gets to a point where you can do that. You know, it's like trusting your mother or something, or trust. You know, there comes a point where you just trust that love, and then you can start taking everything on trust. It's not belief anymore because you've done the testing. You know, so then you can just immerse yourself more and more in his samadhi. You know, and it's his samadhi is incredible. You know, and one small tiny leader of just how I've got many situations like this of when I started to open myself up more to him. He would just do more and more stuff. It's like opening myself up to it. So one night, I was just in this most, out of nowhere, I was in this bliss state that was so incredible. It was like being in the cosmic pussy of the most delicious vagina I can, like, on a cosmic scale. It was like, and I was inside it, and it was like pressing on me. I was in this bliss, I just couldn't believe the bliss. Now you think that was amazing, and it was. This went on all night, and I'm just in this incredible. I hadn't done anything. This was just part of this process I've been in of like gradually relaxing into him. And but to me it was terrifying because I realised this was so delicious. I was lost. I was addicted. You know, I was lost in this pleasure, this samadhi. I mean, it was so delicious. I was completely lost. I was like, I had no map for it, and I was lost. I was hooked. I was completely addicted. And after being, I did luxuriate in it for hours. I did, but in the morning, I realised that I could be eternally in this cosmic pussy. And I went to his murti and I started screaming. I mean, the relationship with him has gotten so dramatised, you know, and made. I mean, people think I'm mad. I don't care. I started screaming at him. I said, I don't want this cosmic pussy. You're my master, not this. I don't want experience to master me. I want you. I'm screaming at him. Why aren't you master me, you know? Why can't master me? Because I'm lost. I'm an addict. This is an experience. I don't want an experience. I want you, you know. I want to be free of experience. I want you. And I was screaming at him. I was wailing, I was crying, and I was in agony. I was literally in a kind of agony. Which you think is strange because I'm in this incredibly beautiful experience, but it was an agony to be in this beautiful experience because I knew I wasn't master of it. I was like a little child, you know, with the biggest, most amazing lollipop in the world, and you're just so completely hooked. And this is how the Guru works in crazy ways. So then what I did was I put on a tape of the Guru, and on the Matrix there was something they sent, and it was a Fijian woman talking. So I screamed at the Guru for half an hour. I was crying and mad and angry, frustrated, and I played that, and it was a Fijian woman talking about the Guru's love, and it really moved me. She was talking about how loving the Guru was. It was a woman on Matumba, And then then there was this tickling. Someone was inside me. It was the guru. I call it the guru. I don't know what else to call it. If everything's the guru. Was tickling. This being started tickling me inside. Tickling like you tickle like that, but from inside. Every part of me was tickling. And still I was rolling around the floor in total laughter. I was just being tickled by him. He was tickling me. And then that went on for a while. And then I got a message. Then I was, it was like the guru. And then I got this message that just come from out of nowhere. Go and look at your mother's picture. So I went and looked at my mother's picture. And then I looked at my mother. And then I got this message that, because my mother abused me generously when I was a kid. She wasn't well. She didn't mean to. She had obsessive compulsive disorder. But she would control my bladder. I had to piss. She was like a Nazi with pissing and shitting. I had to do it on her command and 5 times in a row and shit. Sometimes I shit outside the toilet door because she told me she wouldn't let me shit inside. You can't understand it. It's all the fucked up stuff. But I got communication that she had taken on mental illness and kind of been cruel to me and tortured me because she loved me. That's crazy. It is crazy. But this is what I'm saying. This is how I started to live my sadhana. I started to be open to everything as him, rather than saying, "Oh, it's just crazy." So, and the message was that you're not a victim of your mother. In fact, she I can't prove this, right? That she incarnated in this world with a mental illness, tortured you on her deeper personality, not her gross personality, but her deeper personality did that as a sacrifice because she loved you so much, so that then you would suffer and then come to me, Adida, and then you would be so in pain that you would do the sadhana and I'll enlighten you. And so she as the goddess, which is me, made that sacrifice for you. And I had no way of knowing if that's true or not, but my emotion, it broke my heart. And I called up my mum and I told her what happened. And I thanked her, poured out my love for incarnating, for all the illness and everything she'd taken on, her mental suffering she'd taken on because she loved me, so I could be with the guru. Now, I got no way of knowing what's true, what's not true, but over the last 6 years, I stopped worrying, I stopped wondering, I stopped being concerned about what is so-called true and not true. I just opened myself to everything that the guru, whatever was coming through, and started recognizing everything as him, like literally everything as him, like recognizing everything as him, everything and everyone as him. And the more I did that, the more those kind of events have been occurring in all kinds of different ways, and the more incredible my life's been. The experiences don't mean anything to me. I don't. In fact, I'm not interested in experiences. It's only the love and the wound in the heart. That's what's beautiful. And that's where he is, in that wound, not in the so-called experiences. But I find by opening myself up to the guru, he always leads me there. He doesn't lead me to the experiences. He leads me to the heart, to the love, to the wound. And it's like he's not a consoling space, but it's happiness. It doesn't have to be consoling. So it's just a little example of many. I've got many things like that. But obviously, my patterning also, whatever patterning is involved with the transmission. So it's not. I can't say it's purely him. It's all mixed up, but he's pure. Whatever he needs to do to purify me, I'm open to that. I don't have to judge what the experience is. I don't care about the experience. I just letting him in. Letting him to the point where I don't feel separate from him anymore. I don't feel he's not out there and to me anymore. He's not some being who's separate from me. But paradoxically, I'm still devoted to him, and I worship him, and I'm still having this relationship with him. But he's also me. Mind doesn't comprehend that. But that's how it is for me. So, but we're going way over time, right?
Yeah, I think we gotta wrap up. But let me just read Jude's comment. She says, "Oh fuck, thank you, Simon, for that Leela about your mother. I got it, thank you." And
Yeah, I'm just going to say, the Guru says he changes your past. Well, there's an example where the Guru changed my past. I wasn't thinking it should change, or it just changed. My past with my mother has changed. He's changed it. Now, how did that happen? I don't know. I didn't think that through. I wasn't like trying to think about my mother. Or I loved my mother before. I told her I loved her before. It's not like I never forgave her before. I've been forgiving her for years. But it was just another level that he took it to, of changing my past. So I was just thinking, that's what he says. He changes the past to his devotees as an example.
And Dawn asks a question, I think, about the museum that you were talking to. His question is New York Orpheum or art stories?
What does it mean?
Does everyone? I don't know.
This is the Saatchi Gallery in London. The Saatchi Gallery in London was, beloved there was a woman, a Dutch gallery owner, who had some of his paintings there in the Saatchi Gallery, along with lots of other people.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers Don's question.
I hope it does. Well, then let's wrap it up.
Well, thank you all for participating out there. Who's still there? Surya, Don, and Jude.
Jude, yes.
Cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we finished, they still don't finish whatever light?
They're still there. Yeah, do so.
Should we finish?
Yeah.
Anyone, do you want to say I don't know, a final prayer invocation to the Guru?
A prayer?
Or something to the Guru to finish off? Or the Guru's name or anything?
Something comes up.
Or
Oh, I thought just read the second reading occasion.
whatever you...
Something from that.
I'll wave a light and you do whatever.
Thank you, beloved, for this wonderful evening with Simon. This incredible Leelas, this wonderful profundity, this love that you generate through all beings, and we are participating with you tonight. Thank you so much. We love you so much, beloved. Thank you. Da.
Well, thank you for being a lovely little audience.
You're most welcome.
That's nice.
Well,
Three sweet ladies. No big men.
God,
You set it up really nicely.
In living form.
in living form, yes, we're still alive.
It's nice to really meet you, Simon, because I never really met you. Well, you have seen me around or whatever, but we never talked. So.
No. Yeah. So it's lovely to meet you too, darling.
Yeah.
So where do you live? Here?
I live here now, yeah. I lived in Scotland before.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you were at Findhorn, is it?
Yeah, I was Findhorn.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And maybe that I've only have seen you on Facebook. You know, maybe that is how it does seem. It does start to seem real, doesn't it? Like you see someone a lot.
Yeah.
So I read your posts in Findhorn, you know, the last few years, I think,
Yeah, that could be.
and then I was kind of aware of you.
Yeah, we
being over
communicated
there.
on Facebook a little bit for a
Oh.
while. In the Adidam website.
Yeah.
So you know me from there.
Cool.
Of course, I heard many wild stories about you. So I was sort of really.
And I have just a couple of seconds to close
Yes,
up.
sure.
So
Yeah.
we can talk.
Bye guys, thanks for watching.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for watching and all your hearts. Very
Love you.
sweet. Lots of love, I think, from every one of us. Maybe you can also see who is here. These are Eleanor and Menke were also present. And well,
Yeah.
have a great evening. Ah, Surya waves. I'll wave back.
I nearly died at Findhorn, actually. Okay.
Sorry?
I nearly died at
You
Findhorn.
nearly died at
Yeah,
Findhorn?
with my
That's
father.
another-
Tell it very quickly. It's,
Oh,
not-
no. Yeah,
it's a funny one in the end.
Maybe she